Everyone, thank you so much for being here. My name is Tamara Finlay. I'm going to start this off at the jump by saying I am a lot more comfortable behind a camera than I am in front of a live studio audience. So I am going to be leaning in pretty heavily on my notes. But I'm very happy to be here and to share some of the tiny worlds I spend most of my time hiding inside. I'm a stop motion filmmaker, fabricator, musician, and educator based in Southeast Michigan. My work is rooted in family stories, Ukrainian folklore, and the overlap between everyday life and myth. Today, I'm going to take you through the somewhat winding path that led me to stop motion and how I make these little worlds and why they became the place where I could finally bring together so many different parts of myself and the stories I wanted to tell. And to explain that, I need to start at the beginning. Second. I have to sync up on my end here. I grew up in a Ukrainian American household, and for as long as I can remember, I've been moving between two worlds. This was me as a kid trying to make sense of where I fit in. And there I am on a stage too, probably being super nervous. At home, I was often the bridge between different sides of my family, and at school between my immigrant neighborhood and my American friends. My interest in language and culture stayed with me. I studied Slavic language and literature, and later, as a Ukrainian refugee caseworker, I found myself helping new Americans navigate between cultures too. Over time, I realized that what interested me wasn't really translation in the literal sense. It was everything underneath the words: history, humor, stories, folklore, all the things that shape how we understand ourselves and one another. And words weren't the only way I was trying to express those things. Creative languages, and I learned a lot of them. I grew up in a family full of performers, so music and performance were there from the very beginning. I spent years as a singer and front woman in different bands, writing and performing original music. My band, the Thornbills, even released a single through Jack White's Third Man Records. Weren't we cool? But music wasn't the only thing I wanted to do. I painted, drew, sewed, sculpted. I was constantly following one curiosity into the next. For years, I thought that meant I lacked focus. Then at 42, I was diagnosed with ADHD and found out I did lack focus. But it gave me a different way of understanding the path I'd already taken. Connected interests. Every one of these creative languages was teaching me a different way to tell my stories. I just hadn't found the medium that could bring them all together yet. Until I discovered stop motion. This is me animating my Baba Yaga puppet. She's right over there. People often think of stop motion as solely animation, but I think of it as a performance. I'm not just moving a puppet, I'm acting every gesture, every glance, every breath, one frame at a time. I move the puppet a tiny amount, take a photograph, move it again, take another photo, over and over. 24 photographs become 1 second of finished film, which means a 5-minute short is about 7,200 individual decisions. It is painful. It's also incredibly meditative. Creating has always been the one place where my brain becomes completely quiet. I can spend hours in that tiny world without noticing time pass. And the deeper I got into stop motion, the more I understood why this medium had grabbed me in a way nothing else had. It wasn't asking me to pick a lane. All those creative languages I'd spent my life learning, it needs all of them. And that's because making one of these films is a pretty ridiculous process. It starts with an idea. I write the script, design the characters, and figure out what the film is going to look like. Then I record the dialogue and sound first because I need something to animate to, especially if the character is speaking. Then I build everything. This is what lives underneath the flesh of my puppets. It's a wire armature. It's like a tiny articulated skeleton. Mine are fairly simple. I build them from aluminum wire so I can bend them a little bit at a time. So that way they stay where I put them, and then I take a photo. Oops. All right. Then I build the body around the armature with foam, add latex skin where it needs flexibility, and sculpt the head from polymer clay. And then I bake it in a dedicated toaster oven. And then I make the eyes, the costumes, all of it, the hair. And if the character talks, there's another layer of ridiculousness. I use replacement mouths for the lip sync, which you can see actually in the prior slide. See how those mouths are popping off and I'm putting new ones on? Yeah. I brought them so we can look at them later. But yeah, it's a lot. And then I animate everything. And that's where all those things start coming together. I listen to the recorded performance and I essentially perform it again through the puppet, one frame at a time. And inevitably something goes wrong. The puppets break because this stuff can only take so many bends before it snaps. I nudge a light, I bump a set or whatever, something happens. And if it's bad enough, then I have to reshoot the entire take. So a surprising amount of stop motion is figuring out how to fix the thing you just screwed up without anyone ever noticing it, and lots of swearing. Then I edit the images together and Foley the sound effects, the music, and all the finishing touches that turn those thousands of individual photos into a film. So all of the things I'd spent years doing separately suddenly weren't separate anymore. They were all part of the same process. I'd finally found a medium that fit the way I think and the way I create. The next question was, what stories did I want to tell with it? So like a lot of artists, I started with me. I made this little puppet version of myself and started using her to revisit some of my childhood experiences. Earlier, I talked about spending my life translating between worlds, and I realized animation could also help me translate my internal experience into something other people could actually see. Things like ADHD, sensory overwhelm, distraction, hyperfocus, and that feeling of being a kid who was often physically present, but somewhere completely different in her head. Instead of trying to explain what that felt like, I could build it, I could exaggerate it, I could make it funny, and let the audience experience it with me. That became the basis for a short called Missing or Incomplete, which is the feeling of report card day in 1987.
Okay, you can stop there. Face forward. Take a little step back for me. Hold up the sign.
Those are
please.
actual comments from my report card.
Please try to stand still. Turn to the right, please. No, the other right. Not to the left.
It got better. So animation gave me a way to take something that was happening inside my own head and make it visible. And I started to realize that I could use that same language to explore memory too. Not just my own memories, but the people and places that shaped them, which brings me to my muses. That's my grandfather and my grandmother, Baba and Jajo, the two biggest muses in my work. For years, I had only photographs of them, and I didn't see any film of them in motion until last year, long after I'd started animating them. And when I finally did, something really struck me. Their gestures, their expressions, the way they moved, I nailed it. My puppets moved like them. And I hadn't referenced the footage at all. I think, in a way, I'd been using animation to try to see them in motion again. And I want to tell you a little bit more about these people because they make up so much of what inspires me. This was my grandfather, Andrei Vasilovich Sasak. Before World War II, He was a professor of history. During the Nazi occupation, he risked his life to bring supplies to Jewish refugees who were being hidden in monasteries throughout Lviv, an estimated 200 people. After the war, he met and married my grandmother in a displaced persons camp in Berchtesgaden. In 1950, they came to the United States. He was 37, spoke no English, and his wife was very pregnant. So this professor went to work at Ford, where he spent nearly 30 years on the assembly line as an upholsterer. But that's biography. The man I knew was my Jojo. He was kind and gentle, and the whole neighborhood loved him, and he was my hero. I've been working on a larger project about his extraordinary life, but when I first started animating him, I found myself drawn to something much, much simpler. I wanted to animate him the way I actually knew him. Here he was, just mowing the lawn. I think these little moments can tell us an enormous amount about a person. Here's a man who lost his home, crossed an ocean, started over in middle age, and spent decades working in a factory. And here he is happily tending his little corner of the world. It's the satisfaction of a life well built. And then there was Baba. Tamara Finlay Sisak, my namesake, through coercion. If Jaja was the picture of calm stoicism, Baba was not that. In her youth, she was a stage actress, and she brought all of that drama with her to our neighborhood in Dearborn. She came from an upper-class family, but immigration completely changed the circumstances of her life. She ended up working hard in a meat processing plant. But do you think that dimmed her sparkle? No way. Baba believed in big ambition, bigger hair, and the transformative power of a really strong girdle. She became the neighborhood fountain of unsolicited advice. She had opinions about everything, and she was going to tell you whether you asked for it or not. And that became the premise for The Baba Show. I imagine her with her own little talk show, dispensing advice from her kitchen to anyone willing to listen and anyone who doesn't want to listen.
Oh my god, tell me about it. Oh, hold on. I call you right back. Hi, Turkis. Sada, I gonna tell you something. Your Baba seen some crazy shit. Blackouts, bad governments, and menopause. But you think end time's gonna stop Baba? No way. Just remember, if we stick together, we gonna survive. And if you need some advice, love life, beauty tips, doomsday prepping, ask Baba. I know more than the Google. So take care of your neighbor and yourself. And call your Baba every once in a while. Алло?
Ирка собі бойфренда знайшла.
No way.
А не здогадка.
Really?
That's my Baba. Oops, sorry. Whoopsie. Can you pause that, please?
Oh, hold on. I called you right back.
That's okay. I'll move on from that one. Thank you. Okay. So what I love about making these films is that I can preserve more than what someone looked like. I can preserve the rhythms of how they spoke, the way they moved, their humor, their contradictions, and the way they occupied a room. And once I started rebuilding these people, I wanted to rebuild the world around them with the same attention to detail. And that's where things get really small. And when I say small, I mean tiny. I make all kinds of ridiculous little things that most people watching the film will probably never notice. These are dentures. And there they are. In fact, I put them in almost every scene that I make. They're like my Easter egg with teeth. And then there's details like these Ukrainian ceramics. I didn't just make some vaguely Ukrainian looking knickknack and call it a day. I went down a complete rabbit hole researching different traditions and styles of Ukrainian ceramics, studying the shapes, colors, patterns, just so I could recreate them in miniature. And after all that research and all that work, they just sit casually on a shelf in the background, which I kind of love. The audience may never consciously notice these things, but I know they're there. And for me, that's part of building a world that I can fully occupy. But not all of these pieces are entirely from scratch. Sometimes I use heirlooms. Exhibit A, one of my Baba's scarves. I used the fabric to make my puppet's blouse, and that is one of her napkins over there, which I cut apart to make her tablecloth. She would be pissed. But I mean, it's worth it to me. And I think she'd understand. Someone once pointed out that there's something slightly unhinged about cutting up my grandmother's clothes and using them to make a tiny version of her, and they're not wrong. But for me, it's really the opposite of something macabre. These materials carry history. Putting them into the miniature means that a literal piece of the person and the world I'm remembering gets to live forever. But the things I inherited from my Baba weren't only physical objects. When I was little, she'd grab a shawl, wrap herself up, completely get into character, and tell me stories about the most famous witch in Slavic folklore. Another one of my great muses, Baba Yaga. She lives deep in the forest on a hut that stands on a chicken leg. Much like my Baba, Baba Yaga is fierce, powerful, unpredictable, and morally flexible. She's sometimes a villain, sometimes a helper, and sometimes both. And I've been fascinated by her for as long as I can remember. Recently, I realized that some of that fascination may also come from the immigrant experience that runs through so much of my work. Because when you think about it, Baba Yaga's got a mobile home. And her hopping hut can pick up her entire world and take it somewhere else. She's an immigrant too. And as I started working more with Baba Yaga, I became interested in all of the other strange creatures that populate these stories. A lot of them are completely familiar to people who grew up with Slavic folklore, but pretty obscure to Western audiences. So I started a series called Baba Yaga's Bestiary, where Baba Yaga becomes kind of a guide into that world. I'm taking these creatures and stories and presenting them through my own lens with humor and storytelling that feels familiar to a Western audience, while still drawing from the folklore I grew up with. The first episode is about Lecho, a one-eyed personification of evil and misfortune. But I think I will let Baba Yaga take it from here. You hear it? It's a little loud. A little louder? No.
Baba Yaga's Bestiary. I'm your host, Baba Yaga. Today, I'm gonna tell you about Lecho, the embodiment of pure evil, and what you can do to keep it away. The Slavic demon Lecho is the manifestation of bad luck, misfortune, and misery. This thing is 100% bad news. No redeeming qualities. Lecho is commonly depicted as a tall, bony hag with one big glowing eye. But it can take any form it likes, which makes it a top-tier predator. It can and does eat anything. Forests, rivers, animals. But its favorite is people. And its feeding method is particularly
nasty. Licho hypnotizes its victims, then fills their minds with fear and confusion. Then it wraps itself around their neck and sucks up all their negative energy like a vampire. Licho prefers an easy target. Usually, people who are greedy, ignorant, fearful, or isolated. But nobody is off the menu. Fun facts. Licho sleeps on a bed made of human bones. It steals all its victims' happy thoughts and memories and puts them in an amulet. Licho loves politics and does not fear holy places. Oh, and one more thing. You can't kill it. Before you pee your pants and run away screaming, know that there are ways you can disarm the beast. The first and strongest truth and positivity. Remind you and yourself of all the goodness in the world. This is a special power if done as a community. Equally important is to make life and beauty. Like art, make music, sing up, dance like nobody's watching. Joy is a pen. Little, stick, and if all else fails, you can poke it in her eye and run like that. That thing. Don't ignore it. And never back down. The truth is, evil has always existed, and it always will. But we work together. We can show those folks. So, from Baba Yaga, good night and good luck. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Thank you. And the idea of translating these old stories for a new audience is something I'm continuing to explore, which brings me to what I'm working on here at GHAR. I'm developing the second episode in the series. This piece will center around the Mauka, a female spirit associated with the forest and the natural world. She's beautiful, but there's also something uncanny and dangerous about her. She's often described as having a hollow back and is known for luring men into the woods and tickling them to death. I'm still very much in the development stage. So right now I'm building the visual world around her. Being here in northern Michigan, I've been photographing the wetlands, water, trees, and even things I find along the shoreline, and thinking about how I can translate these into the landscape of her world. So this residency is really giving me the time and space to figure out what the film wants to look like. I started this talk by saying that I've spent most of my life moving between worlds. And somehow I ended up building worlds of my own, only much, much smaller. But these stories I put inside them aren't small. They're all about family, memory, immigration, identity, folklore, and the people and places that made me who I am. I think that's what I love most about stop motion. I can build an entire world on a tabletop and use it to say so much. Before I finish, I want to thank Sue and Bill Kelso, the founders of the Good Heart Artist Residency, and Sarah Furman, its executive director. They put an incredible amount of work into all of this and supporting artists and creating opportunities for the arts in this community. And I'm incredibly grateful for them inviting me here. Having this time and space to work, experiment, and recharge is in such a beautiful place has been a real gift. And if you haven't tried any of Sue's scones, I suggest that you do so because they are life-changing. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. And now I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the process. I brought the set here to, I think I can probably pull up a picture of the, well, you see scary episode, but this is the set. So there's definitely a big difference between what you see on the screen once you know, narrow in that focus with your camera. And yes?
Yeah. Who said how many, you know, I watched the facial expressions
Mm-hmm.
and the way you change the jaw. Okay, you save those in a certain category to say, this is surprise,
Yes.
this is laughter, this is a, oh.
Okay, here, I will demonstrate.
No, exactly, which one you might want.
Usually, I mean, yes, theoretically I have them in order, but oftentimes while I'm animating, they fall out of order. And then I'm hunting for stuff or I drop one on the floor or whatever. And then, yeah, it, but if I wanted to make Baba Yaga look surprised, I'll just pop this off and pop this on and lift her eyelids, which I use Moshir clay, uncured, and then raise those eyebrows, and then, oh my! But it's also the O phoneme. The clay on the eyelids is pliable, but this is no. These are baked, and then I use museum wax, which I actually should have some over here. Yeah. Then I stick a little bit of this goo underneath it, like on here, and then pop it right in. Now, that's for a puppet that has like a lot of facial expression, a lot of movement in the lower part of the face. For my Baba over here, I just use, I do have replacement mouths for her too, but they're just much smaller. It's just her lips.
Who's next to Bob?
That's my great aunt Alexandra and her dog Zirka, who was a menace, as many Chihuahuas are. And this is the exterior of the hut. So I can make things in varying sizes too. I don't need to make this great big hut. And this moves. It can bend up, down, around. I've got that pliable clay on the eye so I can blink that. The door opens. And I have basically a denture for that I pop in for the teeth. Yes.
How long did it take you to build a hut?
Ooh, I think that took me maybe a month. It's hard to say because I'm a mom too. So it's like, you know, I work when I can and typically it'll be at night, but it took me about a month. But if it depends on how hyper that hyper focus is, because sometimes I can knock it out really in a couple of days. The puppets take for me a little bit longer because there's a lot of like stopping in between. I got to wait for latex to cure because that's what I skin them with. And yeah, then I use little beads for their eyeballs. And I think I actually have, yeah. I wouldn't typically use a mechanical pencil for this, but I can. There's little holes in the beads and I can move the eyes around like that. So they're looking around and then the eyebrows will always be either unbaked clay or in her case, just hair that I put together with glue and then I cut them apart. I lose eyebrows everywhere. So you find these little caterpillars all over the floor. Yes? Yes, I communicate with them a lot. They do. And they do, and they heal me too. There have been a lot of times where I've been going through some rough times and I wish that I still had my grandparents with me, and I feel like I do. I've even animated things about how they would react to situations on in my life and pep talks and stuff like that. Yeah. I'm sorry. I use a DSLR and I set it up on a tripod in front of it, and I have a motion capture software called Dragon Frame, which is what most stop motion animators use. Yes, sir.
Well, and some grandparents, but give us any parents.
My parents are still with us, and I don't know if they would like that. No, I actually have been working on my parents too, but that, yeah, I have to approach with a little bit more diplomacy. Yes. I do. I actually just got done with a fabrication gig going to put the sets that I built into the film. Yeah. So I made a series of like 5 diners, very Pee Wee Herman style, with lots of like neon lights and stuff. It was a really fun gig. Kind of both. So I think where I really got into it was during the lockdown. Like a lot of people, I think, acquired some new skills during that time. So I started out on my own, and I used an app for my iPhone, which is what I'm going to teach the workshop with because it's very accessible. I was under the impression that this was something that, you couldn't just do on your own, because I think back in the day that it was a lot more complicated. So I started with this app in a studio apartment on my kitchen table. And then when I realized this is something that I think I'm pretty good at, then I found an instructor online. And during COVID, there was a lot of artists and teachers who were teaching online because that's all they could do at the time. So John Spigler, he's an industry animator, and he's a phenomenal artist. He had a little program called Stop Motion University, and I signed up for every class he offered. And then I started to just take one-on-one lessons with him via Zoom. And then I had another mentor in England. So I invested a lot of time and resources in just teaching myself and then finding further instruction.
Do you have dedicated studio or space, and then when you make a set or make certain things, I know you said that some of the figurines will eventually wear out, but I mean, then you from this store things and then you pull them as you need them?
Yeah, or sometimes I have to just take them apart and use them for bits for something else. Like this set I've had for years. And I do have a dedicated space. I actually have a couple of dedicated spaces. Every space available becomes my space. Yeah, much to the chagrin of anyone around me. I have like a basement studio where I'll do the shooting, and then in the garage is where I'll do a lot of the building and fabrication of stuff. And I use a lot of tools and a lot of stinky chemicals and all sorts of stuff, really whatever I get my hands on. I'm always experimenting with new materials too. It's really fun. Yes.
You mentioned that you're a mom. Have your kids gotten involved in this at all or participated?
I have a 4-year-old, and yeah, he calls it Mama Movies. And we've played a little bit with it. He really likes cars, so we'll zoom cars around and take some photos with it. But I don't think he's quite old enough yet to like give it that sustained amount of attention that it requires. But he's definitely become interested. And when he found out I was coming out here to do this, he's like, "Well, I want to learn too." I said, "Cool. As soon as I get home, let's get to it." Yes.
You have a dentist, a dental technician in your circle to help you with dentures.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I could definitely use some reference. I would love to actually make a tiny pair of dentures out of the same materials that dentures would be made out of. So I might need to pick your brain. I do use dental tools in sculpting a lot. Yeah, so making the dentures, I did use dental tools, and I use them for making the faces and stuff, because anything that's small, it definitely needs a small instrument. Yes.
Staff, if anyone in this room did not sign up for workshop this afternoon and now want to, are your spaces still available? Yes, free. Okay. You can sign up online, or you can go to the front desk and sign up for that one. So if you want to learn more, there's an opportunity over there today.
Yes.
Are any of your shorts are for the folklore museum or cranium museum? Because I have to tell you, I've learned stuff today. It's cool.
Thank you. Yeah, one of my first exhibition was at the Ukrainian American Museum in Hamtramck. So I brought the set in. I also had like a doll that I made of Baba Yaga, and they played the works on a loop. Yeah, so I have done that. Yes.
Have a favorite film, stop motion film that inspired you to begin this, or do you have a favorite?
Oh, so many. So many. What's at the top? He's a current animator, Adam Elliott, and he has a couple of films, most recently Memoir of a Snail, but before that, I think the one that really spoke to me was called Mary and Max. I love that movie so much. Oh, it's so good. Yes, very much so. We come from the same, I think, heart space when it comes to making work, and that is that it's like, I'm really drawn to things that are awkward and funny and poignant, and that sort of run the emotional gamut. Yeah, and he definitely does that with just like so well. Yes.
Do you still have family in Ukraine?
I do have some family in Ukraine. I have extended relatives in Ukraine, yes. And then I worked as a refugee caseworker for a couple of years. And so I'm definitely very much in touch with the Ukrainian community here as well. Yes. Well, I think that's where the ADHD really comes in handy, because I do work probably a lot faster than some. I also am willing to accept a lot of imperfection. So I'm by no means like, I want to get a film done. I want to do it. And being a mom, I got to take whatever time I have. But there have been times where the Baba Yaga's Bestiary, I did that in like a month, which is insanity. It was for an exhibition through Kresge, because I'm a 2024 Kresge Fellow. And so they were doing this online exhibition, and I got really ambitious. And I was like, I want to talk about something. I want to make a thing. So I did it, but it nearly killed me. Anybody else? Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. So here's the skeleton.
So with articulating, you don't allow to play there.
No, you don't.
But I noticed the hands on the witch.
Mm-hmm.
They were beautiful. They were old. They were lumpy. They were.
I just had to remake them. I just had to remake them because the hands are the first thing to fall apart. Because I gesticulate a lot with them, and as a person, I talk with my hands a lot. So my puppets also talk with their hands a lot because they are extensions of me. So little basket of mushrooms. I found a tiny little mushroom under my foot while I was driving here today. So yeah, I make the hands separate so that I can replace them when they break inevitably, because they do. And then I wrap those in like sports tape foam, the fingers. each finger. So I cut the sports tape foam into smaller strips and it sticks to itself. It's very fiddly. And then wrap around each finger. And then I coat that in latex that I tint with acrylic paint. And then for the body, I feel like I had a chunk of foam around here somewhere, but I actually used the foam from, I try to be as earth conscious as I can be in this process and not use, not buy and use more stuff. So when it comes to something like foam, which is not a very ecologically sound substance, I pull it out of old stuff all the time. This is a piece of my son's old changing table. And, you know, you use what you got, right? But it's perfect. It's exactly that, or upholstery foam. I'll use that. It's the same kind. And then I wrap that around this body, you know, and then I'll usually make like a little sleeve, oftentimes out of my son's baby socks because they're just the right size. Sew that around it. And then the areas that you will see from outside of the clothing, I will coat in latex so that it's still bendy. And then the head, I want to be very stable. And so I sculpt that out of clay. And speaking of stability, I should also mention that every piece on a set needs to, and it's something that I didn't do in the very beginning and it made my life miserable, is everything's got to be static. Because any little thing that goes sliding around will screw up the scene. You know, in the beginning, I had things that were just like sort of migrating across like the table back and forth. That just like, and I didn't notice it because I put so much freaking stuff that I didn't even notice my own stuff was just sort of like drifting. You have to like, that's where that museum wax comes in handy, or a hot glue gun. I'm always gluing stuff down so it stays in place. Yes.
Your filming is such a lower speeds than what they would actually be speaking. So are you like helping to open and close your mouth with each sentence, or?
Yeah.
Working that?
I have an unconventional approach to that. So a lot like industry standard is to plot it out visually on Dragon Frame. There is like a section on the software where you can, it even has like these phoneme shapes for you to plug them into where you're talking, but I don't do that. So what I do is I just scrub through the audio over and over again. And because I'm also a very like, you know, audio person, I play it through like just syllable by syllable and animate it as I'm doing that. I just scrub through and yep. But oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And then I listen through the whole thing again because I recorded it too. It's stuck in here. And I'll look in a mirror sometimes too and make faces at myself. When I mean, going into my studio while I'm doing stuff is just like, who is this crazy lady? Yeah. Yes.
Do you have a goal with this beautiful work besides art for art's sake? Now that you're an accomplished artist, for example, did you think of using it politically wise, being a Ukrainian?
Yes, I would love to do that. I think that would require a longer piece, and that requires more time and resources. So I do a lot of grant writing and you know, applying for funding. What I'm trying to do now is I was actually living in the woods for 6 years, and now I'm back out in society and mingling with other artists. I'd like to join a team so that we could do something together that's got impact. So if anyone wants to do that, or you know anybody, send them my way. Or if you have an idea, you want to write a film, let's talk. Yes.
You didn't shrink stuff, fit on that set and join it, killing the parts and stuff like that.
Oh, it was so fun. It was so fun. Yeah. So that was those pieces where I was interacting with my puppets was part of my Kresge Fellowship. They did a short film for us, and I wrote my film and co-directed and knew exactly what I wanted to do. And so they were like, well, what do you want to do in your movie? I was like, I want to interact with my puppets. I want to be in their world and vice versa. So I did that. And what we did was we filmed in front of a green screen, which was nutty because it was like this and there's nobody there, so I'm dealing cards to nobody. And I'm supposed to be looking at Baba Yaga. So the director, Natasha Bestie, she's like standing off of the screen. She's like, look about there. Okay, now deal a card, deal a card, deal a card, because I can't look at my hands. I'm supposed to be looking at her and interacting with her. And she goes, okay, now you're pissed. All right, now accuse her of cheating, that sort of thing. It was really wild, but it was so much fun. Yeah. And now I do it on now I green screen stuff all the time. I mean, I can put different backgrounds with my puppets. It doesn't necessarily have to be me going into the world or whatever, but I can do all sorts of stuff like that with green screen. It's a lot of fun.
Not all your voices, but I missed that.
Yes.
That's all your.
Yes. Welcome to Baba Yaga's Beastie. Yeah. I told you I come from a family of actors. Yeah. Yeah, I do all my own voices and most of the music when I can. Sometimes I'll use stuff that's license free or whatever, or collaborate with musicians that I know, because I know a lot of them now in Detroit. So we work on stuff together. But for the most part, yeah, the most of the voices, I have one buddy who voices a few characters for me because I trust him and he's so good. I have another project where my school desk is anthropomorphic and is constantly distracting me and spewing trash and stuff like that. Yeah, especially when you're an ADHD kid who's totally disorganized. Yes. I have a lot. I've got Ukrainian people who've seen it, just mostly through online exhibitions and stuff like that. But no, I have not shown my work in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yet.